Welcome to the BS Your Way Through Life show. Super excited today. We're talking about one of my favorite topics. And we have Judith Belmont on here, my friend. She's amazing. She's written several books. And we're going to have her introduce herself, tell us a little about her background and everything. And then we're going to get right into it. And we're going to learn some tips, tricks, and how to be able to come out of things like anxiety, different mental health issues. Yeah, take it away, Judith.
Okay. Um, my latest book is called 110 CBT Tips and Tools. So we're going to be talking about CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and how that could help you to have a more positive life. You don't have to even have anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, substance abuse problems. You don't have to have any of that to benefit from life skills, how to manage stress, how to communicate better, how to be more mindful, how to move on in a positive direction from adversity. So, we're going to be talking about a lot of different things that could help anybody at any level.
Oh, I love it. Oh, Judith, you just said the statement that I love that like you don't need any of that. There's ways to cope with this. So tell us what are some of
Absolutely.
the best, like for instance, like anxiety is a word that is used everywhere now. Everybody seems to have so much anxiety. And some people it's like so debilitating. They have a hard time even coming out of the room. What kind of just go. Tell us some
Well,
good
it,
tips.
it used to be thought, and I used to think that the quality of your life is determined by success and what happens to you and what you have and what you do. But actually, research has shown the quality of your life, happiness, is based on your self talk, how you talk to yourself. And when people have anxiety, they don't talk to themselves very rationally and they don't talk to themselves very nicely. A lot of people will think in ways and they talk to themselves in ways that are very self limiting and very self destructive. So, for instance, if you're anxious about, let's say, speaking in a meeting, and you say, oh, it would be terrible if I make a mistake. I don't want to sound stupid. I'm afraid of what people think. This is going to cause a lot of anxiety. Our anxiety doesn't happen just like that. It's how we talk to ourselves. So, what CBT does, and what I do in the book, is talk about skills you can use so that you could identify the irrational thoughts, you identify the cognitive distortions, which are unhealthy thinking habits, and then you can reframe and restructure those thoughts so then you can feel better and then act better.
That's beautiful. You know what? I can attest to this because years ago when I was much more immature and I had a family member who was like incredibly difficult and I was always worried that a fight would break out, that drama would happen. And I worried about it so much and I was so worried about a horrible outcome that I would exhaust myself taking steps to try to prevent it, but instead I ended up pushing it towards it because I was acting out of fear and negative energy. But then when I finally let go and trusted people to make good decisions, voila, things just got better and my life got happier. Because just
Right.
by letting go and having a better, you know, outlook on everything and trusting others and also trusting just yeah.
Well, I think that when you give people too much power, that's going to make you feel like a victim instead of a victor.
Oh, so
And
true.
I think that by taking control of our thoughts and realizing we're not talking about abuse here or criminal behavior,
Right.
no one could make you stressed out. No one can make you upset. And the more you think that someone has power over your emotions, the worse you're going to be off because you're going to be in constant fear of the stars not aligning in your life and things not working out. But once you give up the notion that someone can control your thoughts and you control your feelings, you're more empowered. So I'll give you an example. If you think Or you might hear people say, oh, she stresses me out. She triggers me. He does this. He makes me so mad.
I hear
Well,
that
you
all the
know
time
what?
from people.
That's silly thinking, because no one can actually do that. No one can. We're not talking about a young child and a parent and abusive behavior. We're talking about kind of, everyday society,
And life. Yeah,
relationships, whatever,
exactly.
life. People can't stress you out. People can't make you angry. So I actually had a sheet in one of my books, and I used them with some clients, which is very powerful. How many times a week does someone make you mad, angry, sad, whatever? It would be like 50, 60, whatever. And then I would say, well, guess what? The answer is zero, because no one can actually do that. But we often think we're not in control of our feelings and our anxiety, that people control it. Once we realize they don't, there's no power that anybody has over us.
It's so true. I actually recently had a friend who told me I was delusional. It's like, you're positive about all these things. You're delusional. That's not how the world is. It's just like you can't win. And because, evil always wins. And I'm like, what? I'm
It's
like,
silly,
that is
silly.
why I'm winning, is because I'm positive. That is the key.
Well, a lot of people don't think in such healthy ways. And
No.
actually, by calling you delusional, that is a cognitive distortion. It's the
Yeah.
cognitive distortion of labeling. So if you label yourself, oh, I'm a loser, I'm a failure. I just heard that this morning. I had
Yeah.
someone this morning, not a client. I was walking with someone, and she's going through a divorce, and she says, well, I feel like no, she didn't say loser. She said, I feel like I failed, that I'm a failure, because
Oh,
she's
that's so
going through a
sad.
divorce. And I said, do you realize? And she has my book. I gave her my book.
Good.
She said, and I said, do you realize that's a cognitive, you read my book. You realize that's a cognitive distortion. That's not healthy thinking. I know, but I still feel like I'm a loser. I said, well, let's reframe that. Let's restructure it. So instead of, I feel like I failed, or I feel like I'm a loser, because that is labeling, that's a cognitive distortion. I am sad that I did not succeed in my marriage as I hoped I would.
Right.
That
Yes.
is rational.
That is
It's not
rational. It's
as
also
dramatic.
yeah,
It's
and it's also
not
allowing
as
yourself to go with emotions too, which we do
right,
need to go through. But it's
right.
doing in a way that where it's not downing ourselves.
Exactly. But we often talk to ourselves in ways we would never talk to anybody else.
I
I
know,
said,
right?
so I said to her, if I was going through a divorce, do you think that I would be a failure? She said, no, not at all. I said, so why do you reserve the worst words to yourself? And that's actually an exercise I have in the book.
Oh, love it.
Take your situation, your negative self-talk. I'm a loser, I'm a failure, I shouldn't have said that, I'll never make anything of myself. All these cognitive distortions that are fortune telling. How do you know you're not going to make anything of yourself? How do you know
Yeah.
you're always going to be? She said, I'm always going to be alone the rest of my life. I said,
Oh,
how do you know
so
that? That's fortune telling. That's a cognitive distortion. Labeling, fortune telling, all or nothing thinking, shoulding. I should not be that way. I should be different. I should be over this by now. These are all paralyzing, self limiting beliefs.
I think we
So,
need to get rid of self expectations and look at the process. We're in process all the
yep,
time.
yep,
And we're always improving, and sometimes we stumble, and that's normal. It's called being human.
right. And I told her, you are just as worthy as when you were married. You're just as worthy as the day you were born. And
Yes.
so that's an exercise I actually have in my book, is imagining yourself as a baby. Maybe look at pictures or look at other babies and think, we don't have judgment that the baby should start talking at a certain time, where they're all different, right?
Exactly.
We love babies. Babies are beautiful. Well, you guess what? Your beauty hasn't changed. It's just been
Exactly.
altered, and you've maybe had a lot of crap happen, and then you have a different view of yourself. But it's your internal worth is no different than it was before.
Amen. Oh,
And
so well
just
said.
visualizing yourself as a child and realizing that you are not any less worthy, even if you've made mistakes. Forgive yourself for not knowing then what you know now. Forgive yourself for not having the wisdom that you had to learn through going through things.
And be
And
proud of yourself for the wisdom that you have learned along the way because of your journey.
absolutely. And some people just kick themselves over and over again because they can't forgive themselves for not being as healthy then as they are now. And you know what? It would have been nice. So instead of I should have known better, I wish I knew better. One is an absolute should, which is irrational and cruel. And another one is you're a work in progress. So
Yeah.
I said to her, if I was going through, you wouldn't label me like that. And so that's an exercise I have in the book is look at the negative things you say to yourself and then would think of your best friend or someone you really admire. And would you say anything like that to them if they had the same experience? And no, you wouldn't label them. You
Nope.
would be more nurturing, you would be more kind, you would be more forgiving. And then you realize my filter is like smudgy glasses. I don't have clear glasses. I'm looking through a veil of muddy, smudgy glasses. And it's really my perception, which is the problem.
Yes, exactly. I love that. I think maybe we need to start talking to ourselves as though we were talking to one of our best friends.
Absolutely.
Like have
Absolutely.
have an internal talk with yourself, talking to you like it's okay. We've made a lot of mistakes, but it's okay. You know, we're learning and we're learning process, we're learning progress. So,
Right.
and then, just we need to treat ourselves better, way, way better.
Well, it's very interesting you say that because self compassion is the new self esteem. You know, like I said before, it used to be thought self esteem was like, oh, you achieve things, you have, a better house, you have better kids, you have a better car, you're going to be happier. Not really. It's really how self compassionate you are. Because when maybe, things you regret, let's going back to forgiving yourself, maybe you weren't healthy enough to act differently back then. Maybe you
Right.
needed to go through what you did to reach a different level of awareness.
Exactly.
And by judging from now that I should have known better then, you didn't know everything since you were 5.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, yes. Like when I was first starting to do podcasting, and I tell you, it took me hours and days and months to figure everything out. And I was just like, because it's not like I had money to like throw at someone to be like, can you do this for me? Right. So I'm figuring everything out. And I hated how long it took, how much time it was taking. But then in the end, I learned so much. And I look back now and I'm like, I'm glad I struggled at first because I know more now and I feel better for it.
Well, that shows resilience. And you have chosen to be a victor instead of a victim. You have chosen resilience that whatever obstacles you had in your way that was tough, that was part of the journey.
Yes.
And the journey is beautiful. We all have a beautiful journey. And
Yes,
a
we
lot
do.
of times we don't think of it that way because we're judgmental about the journey.
We,
When I
yeah,
think
so
of
true.
when I think of that personally, professionally, I mean, I made like a lot of stupid decisions, none of them life threatening.
Right.
I don't have any bodies in the backyard or anything like that. But like, what was I thinking? You know, that
Right.
was a dumb decision. But somehow that decision led me to a better decision
Yes.
and a better decision after that.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Oh,
it's the whole journey. And Steve Jobs, in his commencement speech at Stanford, it was a very famous speech that's on the internet. He talked about connecting the dots. You don't really understand where it's all going to lead until you can connect the dots from a different distance.
it's true.
Because, he used to go to the Hare Krishna temple for like his one warm meal a week and, all these things that he suffered through. And he realized that that's what led him to found Apple because,
Wow.
he
Yeah,
had to suffer and he ended up doing, he gave his own little story. We all He's
exactly.
just a lot more spectacular and famous than most of our stories.
Yeah. So okay. For someone who's really stuck in what I like to call victimhood, where they just their perception is so, I don't know, so dark, and it feels like everything's working against them and they're just so sad all the time. What's the first realistic thing they can start doing to start coming out of that? What's the first step?
They can start separating their thoughts from their feelings.
Okay.
So a lot of
Example.
times people confuse them and they
Okay.
think I shouldn't feel anxious. How are you going to change feeling anxious? It's like telling yourself not to feel hungry.
I
I
know these
shouldn't
feelings
feel
just come on
tired.
you. You can't prevent that. They just
Right,
come.
exactly. However, if you identify the thoughts that are creating the feelings, you then will have some control. So let's say you're feeling panicky and anxious about, let's just take speaking in a meeting or just
Okay.
speaking up in a group,
Yeah. Okay.
and you don't want to sound stupid, whatever. What are the thoughts you're having? I don't want to sound stupid. If I sounded stupid, it would be terrible. And then you look at those thoughts and your feeling is panic, but you don't stay in the panic. You be a thought detective and you identify what the thoughts are that are causing it. Once you do
Mm.
that, then you can evaluate and you can have, let's say, a diary or a log, and you write down the thoughts and you write down a more rational alternative. That would
I
be an
love that.
example of something to do. Or you could identify the cognitive distortion. Because if you identify the cognitive distortion, you can be more objective about it instead of subjective. So, for example, I'm afraid I'll sound stupid. Well, worrying about what other people think is going to lead you to a path of misery in your life
Yes. Yes.
because you have no control over that. Are you going to feel bad about sounding stupid yourself? Well, that would mean you're not self compassionate. So, if you focus on your thoughts, the quality of your thoughts, and then be willing to evaluate them in a different way and put on another lens. Maybe your glasses are smudgy and you think it's that important that you don't sound, I don't want to sound stupid. Well, how about I want to be authentic and I want to say what is important to me without the judgment. A lot of people grew up with a lot of judgment and they have the board of directors inside their head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's time to get a new board of directors. Time to
Fire
kick
that
them
old
out
one.
because as they, there's like a common saying, you know, you don't need to rent space in your head
Yes.
to these people who are not good for you. So that would be one thing. Another thing is to have, let me just take a drink.
Yeah, go ahead. I always have a tea here. This is tea talk right here.
That's what happens when I talk a lot. My throat
Mm,
gets dry.
me
So
too.
another thing is to have coping cards. Coping cards are a hallmark of CBT, and coping cards are either old-fashioned note cards or post-it notes or sticky notes on your computer or something as reminders of your worth. And in each of my 110 tips, at the end of each one is an affirmation. So let me just take a random affirmation there.
Yay.
I am worthy of forgiveness and I'm motivated to use what I have learned to better myself and my loved ones. That's an example of an affirmation. Let me take another one. I will empower myself with coping skills that will keep me grounded in times of anxiety and stress. Those are affirmations.
Beautiful.
It will remind you of your worth, it reminds you of your power, and some people find it helpful to put those affirmations on their coping cards that they reminders.
I
You might
love
even
that.
you might have a coping card such as when I am feeling anxious, this is what I'm going to do. When
Right.
I am really sad, these are some skills to use. So coping cards could be affirmations. They can be reminders that you want to remember how to uh, handle it differently. They might be reminders of how I will refute some of my negative self talk. there's a lot of ways to have reminder, these coping cards. You might want to remember, I want to find the gratitude in everything that I find even negative. I can be grateful for something on a cloudy day.
Oh my gosh, yes. Gratitude is magical. Like
Yes, it is.
when you start getting, you know, depressed about things, you just start thinking about the things that you are grateful, even if you're starting so small. Because I know there's people out there that are like, I have nothing to be grateful for. Well, I'm grateful that I got up and breathed today. Start there, even. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? Like find something.
So someone that says, I have nothing to be grateful for has very self-limiting beliefs.
Yes. Oh,
They think
absolutely.
nothing. Well, how about the fact they're breathing, that they're living?
Yes.
Maybe they don't have a terminal illness. Maybe they have
Yeah.
some support system.
Yeah.
So what is a gratitude exercise? I have some gratitude exercise in my book. And one of them is every day, think of 3 new things that you're grateful for.
I
New
love
things.
that.
You don't want to have the generic for my spouse or my kids or my parents or,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
You want to have, what are 3 things you're grateful for today
You need to start
specifically?
expanding.
Expanding. Like, I am grateful that I got to take a walk with my friend today and share our feelings, and that was
Good.
cool.
You
That
know,
would be an
one,
example.
I love it. One example I could also give is I used to have the perspective whenever I had to pay bills, that, oh, these are expensive bills. Like, for instance, our propane bill, so expensive, right? And then a power bill, and it's just like dread, it's just dread paying these bills, right? But then I started being grateful that we had the money to pay for them in the first place. But then I got a different perspective. It was like, somebody said, because I was reading this book, and in the book, she says, you should be so grateful that you are paying for these services because it's warming your house, right? It's giving you electricity, and like we love to, watch things as a family. We like to have the lights on. So now every when I pay the bills, I'm like, I'm so grateful that I get to pay these bills because they provide me with the things that I want and need.
Exactly. That's great. And every stress that we have has a plus and a minus.
Yes.
You know, you might say, yeah, my job's stressful, but the plus is I get a paycheck
Yeah,
and I meet some
exactly.
great people, or I get a chance to use my talents or whatever.
Or
So a lot of
yeah,
times people focus, I think of it as like I'm into metaphors. I think of it as like a donut or a bagel, where you focus on the whole,
yes.
WHOLE, or you focus on the whole, what's missing. And
Ah,
people who focus on what's missing, they're not generally grateful people because they focus on what they're bitter about or what's lacking in their lives rather than what they have.
ooh, that is so well said. That analogy is amazing. I love that. Yeah, the
So
whole
it's a
or the whole.
exactly. And all too many times, people who are ungrateful will be bitter instead of better.
So if you focus on the whole, WHOLE, then you get out of the hole,
Exactly.
HOLE.
And actually, one of my books, I can pull it out, it's in the closet over here, is called The Swiss Cheese Theory of Life: How
Oh,
to
yeah.
Get Through Life's Holes Without Getting Stuck in Them.
I love that.
Because instead of wishing the holes in our life away, we want to embrace the holes because that's what gives us our depth. And
Yes.
that's how we can get deeper instead of
Yeah.
weaker.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
the analogy, I love analogies. That's basically what a lot
Oh,
of
me
my
too. That's
books
my
are in. I love
favorite.
it because we can really identify with analogies and it makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
So just think of Swiss cheese. How do we get the holes in Swiss cheese? We get the holes by fermentation, by bacteria. It
Hmm.
doesn't sound like so pleasant, but that fermentation process, the bigger the holes, did you know this is actually true? The bigger the holes, the more pungent the cheese. So
Yes.
that's why the cheese in Europe, they allow more fermentation because it's not USDA regulated or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And they're actually more pungent cheese than the Swiss in the United States. So,
Interesting.
uh, so that correlated to our lives, sometimes the bigger the disappointments, the bigger the holes in our lives, the bigger, the stresses, the more we become more empathetic, we become deeper, become more of a person of character.
Yes. Oh, that's so true. Like it is the trials and things that we go through that help shape us and help us become
Exactly.
like stronger and better. There's an analogy that was told. I think it's actually a true story. There was some scientist or somebody, I don't remember, but anyway, they grew this huge tree and it was inside some sort of a dome or whatever, and the tree was fine, but it was weak because it didn't have any elements to challenge it. And so when they
Wow.
took the dome away, the tree just fell over when a huge windstorm came because it
Wow.
couldn't survive because it hadn't experienced the elements, so it was weak. So
Oh,
it's our
that's great.
experiences and trials that make us stronger and help us to be able to actually get through life. So it's something to be grateful for. Okay, I hate this challenge, but I'm grateful that it's shaping me
Right.
and teaching me in
You
good
might,
ways.
life can throw curveballs, and we might not choose the curveballs, but we can always choose how we respond to them.
Exactly. The struggle would be, though, is if we're stuck in victimhood when we're going through trials, then we don't learn anything. So
Well, we don't.
and that's the thing is like you can get out of victimhood, and as soon as you do, then you start learning.
So I'm going to give you a little exercise that you and your listeners can do.
Ooh,
If you
fun.
clasp your fingers like this,
Okay.
which thumb is on top?
My right thumb is on top.
Okay. And my left thumb is on top. Okay.
Okay.
So if I do like a live presentation, usually it's about half and half, right? So
Right.
now unclasp your fingers and put it the other way. And
Okay.
so the other thumb is on top. How does it feel?
Feels weird.
Very weird. But for you and I, we're it feels weird to you, but it doesn't feel weird to me. And the way that feels good to you feels weird to me. We're all
Okay.
different. We all have different perceptions. And when people have self-limiting beliefs, they only look at things in one way, and they don't have the flexibility to feel a little weird, to stretch their way of thinking, to look at things in a different way. Not everybody is like you. And so this shows how important it is to shift your perception and your
Yeah,
perspective, because one way isn't more right than the other. So
that's true.
an advanced version of that is folding your arms.
Yes.
Okay, my right arm is on top. How about yours?
My right arm is on top as well.
Okay, now let's do it the other way
I
and
don't know
try to
how.
put the other.
Oh my goodness, I couldn't do
It's
it for a minute.
it's hard to do it. You have to kind of roll around in a group. It's about half and half.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel comfortable with the right arm, a lot of people with the left arm. It just shows when you're dealing with people, particularly in conflict, they might have a very different comfort level. And
Right.
what's very much of a no brainer for them might be a really stretch for you. And
Right.
it's not right or wrong. It's the importance of being flexible and looking
Yes.
at things in a different perspective. That's good for our own self talk as well as our relationships with others.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So well said. Oh my
Thank
goodness.
you.
This is an amazing conversation. Okay, so
Thank
I
you.
had I want to get my notes here because I had some thoughts. We might have already covered them, but I want to just make sure.
Sure. Well,
So yeah, we basically did. One of the things I had was despite having, these mental debilitating situations or emotions that come up, how can someone thrive anyway? And we talked about some tools and things, but what are some other things that come up for you?
we it's really important to realize that our situations that happen to us don't directly affect us. It's our beliefs that are the gatekeepers.
Right.
And so when people are very debilitated by anxiety and depression, they're not thinking clearly,
No.
and they need to learn the psychological ABCs.
Yes.
And what the psychological ABCs are is understanding how things work. A is an act or an event. C is the consequence, which is your feelings and your behaviors. And in the middle is the B. And too many times, people have what's called ants, automatic negative thoughts that go right from A to C. And they don't even realize they can choose their perceptions, the beliefs in the middle. So I'll give you an example. Let's say someone walks by you, if you're out in the town, and they look the other way. You could, the A of the actor event is a person walks by you and doesn't acknowledge you. The C is the consequence. Your feelings might be crushed. Maybe they're mad at me. That would be the belief that makes you crushed. Or you might think, oh, they might not have seen me. Maybe they weren't wearing their contact lenses. And then you would feel amused. You might think they think they're too good for me, and you might be angry. And then the next time you see them, you might snub them. It's all not the event didn't cause your reactions. It's how you interpret it.
Oh my
And
gosh, I love
people,
that.
it's the psychological ABCs. If anybody has any problems with negative feelings, interpretations, anxiety, a lot of anger, you got to focus on that B in the middle and realize you have a choice of how you're going to react. A doesn't cause C, but often people think it does. And they say, she made me feel real nervous. Guess what? No one can do that.
No one can do that. You made yourself feel nervous.
I felt nervous when she said that or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
you rephrase things to take responsibility. And that is having what I call assertive self-talk. Just like in talking to other people, you use I statements. I don't feel comfortable saying something so personal versus stop being so nosy. One is aggressive because you're being rude to someone, and another is using an I statement. We need to do that to others, use I statements, but we also need to use I statements to ourselves. I don't feel comfortable when she says things that I consider rude versus she shouldn't have said that.
Right.
One, you're going to be indignant, you're going to be angry, and you're
Yes.
going to,
Oh my goodness. Yes.
be rude back.
Yes.
But if you are thinking rationally, you will be in touch much better with your thoughts and use I statements instead of the you statements.
I love that. That's awesome. Oh my goodness, so good. And also back to the like someone on the street and passing you in feelings. And yeah, it's so easy to interpret someone's actions as because it could be anything. They could have not seen you, they could have seen you, they could be mad at you, right? But I'm trying to do this with myself. I've been doing this for a while and it's really been helping me is I tell myself, okay, until you actually hear from that person that they are mad at you or they are ignoring you or whatever, then you assume the best in people. You assume, I'm going to assume that they just didn't see me all good because what good does it do me to hang on to that anxiety and think about it for days of whether or not this person is
Well,
liking me or
let's say
not?
that person is upset with you about something.
Yeah.
So it's like maybe you have some need to clarify something with them.
Yeah.
You could say, oh, I saw you in town last week and you just walked by. Did you notice me? Because
Yeah.
I felt a little funny. I thought maybe I said something wrong. You could just like,
Yeah. Just clarify
just
it.
clarify it.
And if they
Exactly.
are mad at you and you did do something and it was unintentional, well, you can fix it right then and there, you know? But
Right.
it's like
Exactly.
there's no need
So,
to pine over it.
but a lot of times people are not assertive
Yeah,
and they're
that's true.
afraid and they don't want to confront and they don't want
Yeah.
someone to think they're too sensitive
Yeah.
because people will tell you that. People will
Uh-huh.
say, well, you're just way too sensitive. Oh,
Right?
you're too this. And
Oh,
so,
no.
but if you don't give people so much power and you realize that people aren't necessary paragons of mental health themselves. And so maybe they should not have so much power over you.
Right. Oh, exactly. I actually, when I was a kid, I used to worry about what people thought and everything because where I grew up, it wasn't popular or whatever. And because I was homeschooled, and back then in the 90s, 80s, and 90s, and where I lived in Idaho was not a popular thing. You were considered, an outcast because you're
Right.
homeschooled. You can
Yeah.
considered stupid and
Yeah.
all that stuff. So I cared about what people thought. until I had an experience where a friend uh a cousin of mine had invited me over to her house for a tea party. I was like, oh, cool, because she was popular and she never invited me anywhere. I was like, oh, we were the same age. And so she invited me over. And then she had other of her friends over and everything. And we were playing in a room and having fun. And then my aunt came in and said, hey, you ready for the, punch and cookies? And my cousin's like, yeah. And so my aunt brought it in, and then I go to sit at the little table she had in there, for the punch and cookies. But then my cousin says to me, she's like, servant, sit over there. And she points towards her closet. And I was like, oh, and then everybody started giggling. I'm like, she brought me here to humiliate me. This makes sense now. And
Oh
I was
no.
like,
Oh, that's
yeah, I
terrible.
was, so I was like, I sat there for a minute and I was like, you know what? I don't have to be here. So I got up, I left, and I walked home, and I cried on the way home because
Wow, good for you.
at first I was like devastated. I was just like, oh, but then I'm so grateful that my cousin did that.
Wow.
This was a changing moment for me.
Wow.
I'm like, to this day, I'm like, I'm glad she did that because all of a sudden I felt this empowerment come on me. And I was just like, you know what? I will never allow myself to be put in that situation again. Not meaning that I won't allow myself to be invited to anything, but I mentally will not allow myself to be put in that
Wow.
situation. If somebody invites me, does that thing again, I'll be like, who cares? And walk away. So I emotionally detached myself from caring what others thought about me. I didn't care. I'm like,
Wow.
I'm going to be who I am, love who I am. They don't like it. That's their issue, not mine. And
That
so,
is fabulous. Well, when believe it or not, I used to be very unconfident. And my first job out of graduate school, I worked at a mental health center, and my boss was very intimidating. I was a little afraid of him. Here I was 23 years old and
right. Yeah.
very not confident in myself yet. And he was drunk at a Christmas party and he me have it. I was so afraid of what he thought of me. And he basically told me that I was a disappointment when he was drunk. I was disappointment
My
and
God.
I didn't realize you would be so anxious and whatever. He basically, and you know what? That was a turning point for me. All this
Yes.
time I was running what he thought. Now I knew. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, so I guess he's right. I was not as confident as I was. I'm a lot older now than 23 years old, and I've gained a lot, but it freed me from worrying what people think because I already think, okay, well, they think the worst. So I better just focus on myself and getting myself healthier. And
Exactly. That's what
actually,
you have to do.
he didn't have the power over me anymore once I knew really what he thought. And you know
And
what? I think he got to like me.
yes, because when you own yourself and people realize they don't have control over you, you it's amazing how people are attracted to you because of that. Like
Yeah,
I had
it's
when I was 23 and I had moved to San Diego, I had accumulated a few friends, and one of my first friends accumulated. Uh, I think I had been there probably about maybe 2, 3 months or whatever. And one day she was upset because I was going to go somewhere, and she's like, "Well, if you're because I hung out with other people too. And she's like, well, if you hang out with, because she didn't like this particular group or whatever. She's like, if you hang out with them, well then, you can't hang out with me. And I was just like, what? And so I got out of the car. And at first I was like, felt a little anxious about it. I'm like, wait a minute. Why do I care? She's just trying to see how much she can control me, and I won't be controlled. And my experience from what my when I was a kid at 10 years old with my cousin and whatever, all come flooding back to me. I'm like, no, no. And so I'm just like, okay, yeah, then I guess we're not going to hang out anymore type of thing. And guess what happened? She continued to call me and hang out with me. And she's
ah
like, oh, I've decided I'm going to hang out with you anyway. And I'm like, sometimes it's just a power trip for people. They want to see how much they
interesting.
wrap you around their finger.
Interesting.
Yep.
Well, that's good. You had confidence.
I did. And that's the thing is you gotta know who you are, love who you are, and then nobody can push you around.
Yeah. But A lot of people don't feel that way because
No,
they give more power to other people than themselves.
it's true. And
They
you,
want I mean, we all need support. It's important to get support, but and we look for validation in others, but we don't want to look for validation in all the wrong places. We
right.
don't want to like looking for love in all the wrong places. And the most important place to get validation is from ourselves.
Yes. Yes, exactly. In fact, I'm part of this business class. It's amazing, and they teach about all kinds of things. But she talks about like your home. Your The lady says I can walk into someone's home and tell what their self worth is by the state of their home, because you can declutter your house or you can organize your house, but it's going to go right back to the way it was until you fix what's wrong in here with you, how you value you. And I was just
Seriously.
like, oh my goodness. I'm like, so, and it's true. It's just like how much you value yourself determines how you perceive life, how you treat yourself, and how your living situation and just your relationships, everything.
Cool.
Yeah. So anyway, it's just it's amazing to me how, it all starts with in here. We have to finally accept ourselves and start loving ourselves in order for us to,
Self-compassion and
yeah,
compassion towards others. Empathy is really one of the most important skills in relationships for real meaningful relationships that are not so superficial. Um,
right.
having empathy for others and
Yes.
yourself. Yeah.
It's true. And it's easier to have a healthier relationship too, in marriage, especially because how exhausting is it when your partner has such low self esteem and they're constantly like, and they're looking for constant validation from you? Like, do I look good enough? Or you didn't compliment me today, or just like, oh, I don't feel like how exhausting is that for the other side and also for you? Because then you're always anxious and always looking for that validation from your partner.
It's interesting. I was thinking of a presentation that I did to a group. Um, it was like a local organization. And I said, write down on these note cards what makes you feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
And you know what people did? Then I collected the cards. And it was unbelievable because almost everybody felt good about themselves because of what other people said to them
Ooh.
or compliments.
Oh no.
And the problem is what happens if you don't get them? You
Then
know,
you're nothing. You're worth nothing.
exactly. But it was really interesting because it's a pretty high level group. And I was surprised at how many people just were so needy of the validation to make them feel good about themselves. Because
It's
that was
so
the question.
sad.
What makes you feel good about yourself? It's not self compassion. Most people didn't think of that. Self
Nope.
compassion, gratitude, letting myself be self loving. It was when my husband compliments me or when these people want to hang out with me or whatever. It was like, wow, we're very other directed in a lot of
Oh
ways.
no. Yeah. You have to be able to actually compliment yourself and having it come from you.
Yep.
Because
And believe it.
because if you're just relying on other people for your happiness and for your self-esteem, then you have nothing.
I have a visualization that I do that's probably in the book. I don't know, but it's a common visualization that I have is because I have a lot of visualizations and
Yay.
little
I love it.
activities, and I don't have it with me. But if let's imagine a $10 bill or a $20 bill or a $100 bill,
Yes.
and how much is it worth? Let's say it's $20.
Okay.
$20. Okay. Then what I would do in a group is I would have people crush it, fold it, step on it, and then it would come back to me. How much is it worth? $20, right?
Still $20. Yes.
$20. But that's a lesson that no matter how much you feel stressed or crushed and stomped on, you're still as worthy as you were before.
Oh, that's the most beautiful analogy. That
Yeah.
deserves an
It's a
applause.
good exercise. Thank you.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Well, I know that we got to wrap this up because you've got another thing going on. So, give us, leave us with your number one best therapy tip, something that you can do on your own, what you should do, someone that they can start doing now, or whatever you're going through emotionally, mentally, whatever. What's your best self therapy tip?
I think that self-compassion overrides everything.
Okay.
I think that if you're kind to yourself, you don't have negative self-talk. If you're loving to yourself, you will be a happy person. But a lot of people are not like that. They are critical of themselves. But people who are critical to themselves, they think it makes them better people because they have a critic in of them. It just makes you sadder. Doesn't make you better.
Right.
So I
That's
would say that would be the number one tip is to be compassionate to yourself. And then you will be able to be healthy and compassionate towards others.
that's
But
beautiful.
without that, it's going to be very hard if you have very self-limiting beliefs that keep you down and keep you feeling judgmental about yourself.
So maybe people could start by like whenever they have negative thoughts coming in, they need to replace it with a compassionate, self-compassionate thought.
Right. Like I'm such an idiot with I'm someone who cares very much about doing the right thing.
Yes.
And it's hurtful when I don't achieve that.
There
That
you
would be
go.
okay.
Beautiful. Yes.
So be be your own best friend and be nurturing in your self-talk.
Take yourself out to
I
dinner.
Yeah, exactly. And treat yourself like you would a best friend. I
Yes,
would say that that would be a, a very achievable thing.
I love
A
that.
lot of times people also think that I should just be over this already, whether it's a breakup or a loss of a
Right,
job or a
right,
regret. But uh, be kind to yourself and realize that there's some things that you might never get over, but
right.
you still can get through it. And it
Yes,
still can be beautiful on the other side.
exactly.
I used to do, to promote my other books in the past, I used to have inspirational posts on Facebook, but now I don't because my Facebook page was stolen by
Oh my God.
spammers. Yeah, I fell for a scam,
I know they're
and
so easy to fall for.
well, I kicked myself a little bit for falling for it, but I screen shared my screen because someone was going to help me be ready for Facebook Live. And I thought I was being interviewed. And he said, "Oh, I'll do it for
Oh
you." Shared the screen of how to do it. Well, they
no.
stole my Facebook page, so I
Oh
don't have that
my
anymore.
gosh.
But the reason I'm mentioning it is number one, if you go on my Facebook, don't think it's me.
Yes, it's
Um, and Facebook has no customer service, so I keep on
no,
reporting it,
yeah,
but it doesn't matter.
it doesn't work.
But but when I had my Facebook page live and good, and I had many followers, 185,000 followers.
Oh
The
my goodness.
most the most popular post that I had, there was a couple of them, but one of them was exactly that.
Oh,
Is there's some things that we don't ever get. I had like a bridge and flowers on under the bridge. I said, there's some things we might never get over, but we still can get through and it still can be beautiful on the other side. And
that's beautiful.
sometimes we have to remember that we sometimes might not get over something. There might be some scars that we have,
Right.
and we still can make life beautiful
Yes.
despite those scars. It doesn't have to be perfect. We still can do it.
Exactly. I think it's different from getting over something versus overcoming something. So
Yeah,
when you
getting
overcome
through
it,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're getting through it, overcoming, yeah, because sometimes like my dad, when he passed away, obviously sometimes I still cry about it. I'll think about him or whatever, and I'll still cry about it. But it doesn't mean that I'm, completely damaged or wounded. I still have a beautiful
Absolutely.
life, but I definitely still
And
miss him.
it's a great tribute to him. And you want to be able to keep his memory alive in
Exactly.
your heart. And
Exactly.
that's beautiful that you have that relationship, that you carry that.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Judith. I really, really enjoyed having you
I
on
enjoyed
my
being
show
here. I love
today.
talking to you.
I
You're
hope we can do a
fabulous.
part two because there
I
is
would
so
love to.
much to talk about this. Like
I
so
would
much.
love to.
Don't forget
Thank
to
you so
yeah,
much.
yes, thank you. And don't forget to share with me your all of your links and things. I'll put all of those in my show notes.
Terrific.
All
Thank
right.
you very much. I
Thank you
appreciate you
again.
having me. Bye
All
bye.
right. You have
Bye
a
bye.
great day. Bye.
Thank you.